to the faculty and staff of both the Department of Political Science and the Hesburgh Program in Public Service for having me here this weekend. It's my ICE Arena debut. So I'm a 2007 political science graduate of Notre Dame. I now work on Broadway. Graduates of the class of 2018, I am as surprised as you are that I am standing here before you. And if that were not unlikely enough, I have another surprising fact. Before I arrived here at Notre Dame, I was voted most likely to succeed in my high school class. I share that not because I'm bragging, I'm a little bit bragging, but I share this because one of my graduating classmates was Lebron James. He was voted best smile, which he frequently showed off when we were graduating, as he entered the NBA as the #1 draft pick and signed a Nike deal worth $100 million. It was funny to all of us at the time. And it's something I've thought a lot about since then. What is success? What is achievement? And what do either of those things have to do with being happy? So I hope I can offer you some answers to that today from my 11 years since graduating from Hamilton, and yes, from the life and career of my classmate LeBron. But I want to start by sharing a secret. From a very young age, I had a deep desire to change the world. I'm guessing many of you know this feeling. And I spent a lot of my life wondering how exactly I was going to do it. And when I was here on campus, I thought politics was the path. And yet, all of my work as a political science student in DC, on campaigns and congressional offices, led me to this weekend in 2007, with the primaries heating up. That was a key political year. Everyone was gearing up for the 2008 election, and I knew that I did not want to go into politics. And so I'd had the chance to do the work, and I'd seen so many people work so hard for results that seemed so far off. I needed to do something that was more immediate. So in a lot of ways, I was the perfect target for the Teach for America recruiters who were on campus. Want to change the world? Not sure how? I was like, yep, that's me. So Teach for America, I did end up teaching. But for my first year after graduation, I worked in communications for Teach for America. This was mostly because I, like many of you, I suspect, was completely overcommitted in college. My senior year, I produced or directed 6 plays, I ran the student union board, I ran a major concert called The Show, and I sometimes also went to class. I didn't really feel ready to teach just yet, so I took this desk job in New York. It took me to New York City, which I dreamed about, and it also let me start paying my student loans. And a quick word about theater. I fell in love with directing here on campus, but I had no concept of how to do that professionally. I didn't even consider it, really. The only thing that I can really share from that is pay attention to whatever your passions are. They may be exactly what is going to pay the bills, but they might not, and if they're not, listen to them. It might just be a matter of time before you figure out a way for someone to pay you for the thing that you love to do. So, I graduate, I take the communications job, and after about 6 months of commuting to Midtown, working in a cubicle, carrying a BlackBerry, I'm that old, I did have a BlackBerry, I learned that I could not work in an office. And this was an important lesson. You're going to have to try some things just to know that they're not for you. That's okay. Don't worry about wasted time. You're going to have to go through those things in order to get closer to becoming who you are. So I finished a year at a desk, I moved into a classroom in Flatbush, Brooklyn at Explorer Charter School, and I thought, education, this is it, this is how I'll change the world. I had this sense of responsibility to make a difference. I suspect many of you have the same responsibility. After all, how can you attend this university with the legacy of Father Hesburgh's leadership without feeling responsible for making a difference? That servant leadership so perfectly captured in Father Ted's words to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. upon arriving to a civil rights rally in Chicago in 1964, where do you need me? And that's a powerful and useful question. Where are you needed? It absolutely informed my desire to teach. Wherever you're headed, whatever you choose to do, I urge you to consider what the world needs, where you are needed. And be courageous to accept the hard answers. It may be in DC, or in Flint, Michigan, or at Standing Rock, but it might also be at a school board meeting, or in your apartment building, or on a bus. It may even be standing up and walking out of your own commencement. I hope none of you feel the urge to do that now. But most of the time, it will be the simple, profound act of saying or doing something or speaking up for someone when no one else will. Where are you needed? And here's a more complicated thing. You're going to have to make your best guess. You won't always get it right. So yes, look where you're needed, but you have to also consider where you want to be. I learned this my 3rd year of teaching because I was waking up too many mornings wondering what else I could do. I liked teaching, but I just had this feeling like if I didn't try the theater thing, I would always regret it. And this is something that you may already know, and it sounds cliche, I promise it's true. You are the best guide to your own happiness. If you find yourself waking up too many mornings, wondering if you can or should do something else, you can and should do something else. This applies to jobs, living situations, relationships. Listen to that voice. That voice was telling me I'd always regret it if I didn't try theater. So I started asking my actor friends for the names of directors that they had known or worked with, and I sent those people emails. And some of them didn't write back, but some of them did. And we met for coffee or lunch, and I explained who I was, and that's how I met my first mentor, Gordon Greenberg, who then introduced me to Thomas. I later learned he went by Tommy Kail. This experience taught me that it's not only is it okay to ask for help, you're going to need to ask for help. And people usually will help. Sometimes they won't return your email, sometimes they won't be able to, but if they can, they usually will. So at the end of that school year, I had a choice. Do I stay at my school or and go on a path to become a dean and then a principal, or do I leap into this freelance directing thing? And it was a tough call because I still felt that responsibility to make a difference, which felt like something I was doing in my school. So how could I give that up for theater? It felt selfish. I was going back and forth about this for a long time when my friend and coworker Siobhan Hall, who's now a fantastic principal in Baltimore, closed our office door, sat me down, and said, "Our students don't need you to show up here and teach if that's not what you want to be doing. Our students need to see people pursuing their dreams. If this isn't your dream, you're not doing anyone any favors by being here." And it clicked. I told my school administration I wouldn't be back in the fall, and I circled October 1st because that was the rent that I didn't have and would have to figure out how to pay. And I lined up every conceivable teaching artist gig, substituting, tutoring, anything I could do in the very lucrative field of education to be able to afford the lucrative field of theater. It's amazing this worked out. And about 6 months after first meeting Tommy Kail, he called to offer me the job as the assistant director on a new play coming to Broadway called Magic Bird, which is about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Now, I'll never forget that phone call, that feeling. I mentioned LeBron before. LeBron and I first met when we were about 13 years old at a basketball camp in Akron. I grew up playing sports, but basketball was always my favorite. So, you know, working on a play on Broadway with Tommy about basketball, it was all of my dreams come true. And 3 weeks after we opened, the show closed. And I was not prepared. I went back to figuring out how to pay rent and hustling, figuring out what the next show would be. I kept at it for about a year after that, and I finally got back from working on a show in Albany in February, and I had $7 in my checking account, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this freelance thing. So I called my school, where I was still substitute teaching, and asked if they had anything more permanent. It turned out they just had a teacher leave on maternity leave and asked if I would come back and finish the school year, and I did. I kept directing. By now I started writing. A good friend of mine, a fellow Notre Dame alum, we wrote a play about the Arab Spring. We traveled to Tunisia. The Public Theater helped us develop it that fall, and I went home to Akron that Christmas, and I told people, this is what I think it's going to be. I'm going to be a 7th grade middle school teacher who also does theater. And about a month after that, I got a voicemail from Tommy, and he said, "Vassel, it's Kail, call me. I'm about to change your life." So I called him. He asked what I'm doing. I say, teaching 7th grade. He says, this might be tricky. And he explains that this is for a workshop of Hamilton. And this is the first time the show is going to be on its feet. A lot of the time it's just going to be actors learning choreography and music. They don't know the show at all, and there's a lot of songs. The only week, he says, I absolutely need you is when we actually present to a few private audiences. And I asked the dates, and he tells me, and it was my spring break. So I already had the week off. And during those workshop rehearsals, Siri Scott, my acting and directing professor here at Notre Dame, called me to invite me back to campus to direct a production of 6 characters in search of an author. The dates of that were August to November. We started rehearsals for Hamilton at the Public that Thanksgiving. So I went back to my school for a second time and explained that I would be leaving at the end of the school year to pursue theater yet again, and I'm forever grateful for how supportive they were and they still are. So I came back to campus. This is right before we start Hamilton rehearsals, and I had an amazing time directing the show on campus. That production introduced me to Austin Swift, who was and is an excellent actor. The show did well. Lots of people came, especially to our last performance when Austin's sister Taylor was in the audience. And after the show, we're standing in the DPAC, and I'm chatting with the cast and telling them about how I'm about to go back to New York to work on a new hip-hop musical about Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton. And they smiled, and they nodded, and they looked a little concerned for me. And this is another thing that's important, imagining the dream job, which right now might be beyond imagining. Because yes, what happened next for me is we began rehearsals and we opened off-Broadway, and every moment since then has been more ridiculous and remarkable than the last. My job right now is an absolute dream that asks everything of me and is rewarding in so many ways. And it didn't exist when I graduated from Notre Dame. I could never have dreamed or imagined myself striving towards this job because in 2003, Ron Chernow hadn't even published the book. It would take years for that book to come out, for Lin-Manuel to find it, years more for him to write it, and years more for them to call me to ask for my help. So there's a very good chance that the dream job for each of you is one that does not exist right now, which is both terrifying and completely thrilling. Who knows what you might get to do? So that's the story of how I found my way here to celebrate your remarkable achievement this weekend. I now believe that making art is the best way for me to change the world, and I could never have foreseen the ways in which my work with Hamilton, a Broadway musical, would actually, in fact, bring me back into very political headlines. And education hasn't disappeared for me either. Our EduHam program has brought tens of thousands of students to see the show in every city for $10 a ticket, not only to see the show, but to also perform on our stage. Some of you here today know exactly what it is that you're going to do to change the world. I am so jealous of you and so excited for you. Go do that. Some of you have no idea what it is that you want to do to change the world. I get it, I was you. It's going to be an amazing adventure. Many of you are somewhere in between, and the only absolutely true things I can say from these 11 years since I graduated are the following. You're going to hear this a lot, but work hard. I don't need to tell you it. It just doesn't stop being essential, and it's the easiest way to stand out. Be kind to others, yes, but also to yourself. Things are going to take as long as they take. Life is short, yes, but it's also long. Don't be afraid. Specifically, don't be afraid to be yourself. The world desperately needs you to be yourself. Surround yourself with people who are not like you, who are smarter than you, who have lived lives you know nothing about. It's going to be hard, it will challenge you, but it will make you better, I promise. In a political climate of walls, pay attention to the doors you walk through that someone holds open for you. Hold doors open for others, especially if they traveled further just to get to that door in the first place. And when that feels hard, and I know it can, remember that someone else's success does not threaten or diminish your own. The world is wide enough, I promise. Early in his career, Lebron was hounded by those wondering if he'd ever win a championship. Then he did, and then the world wondered how many he would win. Success, achievement, happiness, at the end of the day, you're going to have to define all of those things for yourself. And if, like me, you are striving to change the world, let this amazing weekend be a reminder that you already have. In what you've done in classrooms with papers and projects and presentations and discussions, but also in your friendships, the time with your roommates, significant others, past and present, time spent volunteering, performing, playing sports, traveling. The world is different because of everything you've done to be here today. And if you don't believe me, please ask your parents and family members and the people who made miracles happen for you to be here. I promise they can tell you how different the world is because you are here. Because here's the other side of that secret desire to change the world, you're going to. That is both an enormous opportunity and an essential responsibility. Take care with the differences you make because what you do is going to make a difference. The most political acts of your life are likely to be the small, everyday choices you make, how you treat others, the environment, your career, your voice, your actions, however you intend to change the world. Don't forget that you are, in fact. It's only a question of how. I hope you are as absolutely thrilled as I am when you think of everything ahead of you. I am so humbled and honored to stand here before you and the work that all of you have done. The world has never needed you more than the world needs you right now. How lucky we are indeed. Thank you and congratulations.